Ethan wasn't supposed to go near the woods. His grandma made that very clear from the start. Too wild, she said, and too many places for a boy to get lost. But on that quiet April afternoon, the edge of the forest looked different. Less like danger, more like curiosity. He was 12, old enough, he thought, to handle a short wander beyond the fence. That's when he found the dog. She was lying in the grass where the trees met the field. Half hidden behind a bush. Golden fur tangled with burrs and dirt. Ribs faintly showing. One paw curled under as if she'd been limping for days. At first, Ethan thought she might be a coyote. Or worse, something dead. But then her ears twitched. And then, those eyes. Big, brown, full of something Ethan couldn't name. She looked up at him without fear. Just hope. He didn't hesitate. "Grandma." "She followed me home," Ethan said breathlessly, standing in the kitchen doorway 10 minutes later. The golden dog stood behind him, panting, her tail wagging slowly, nervously. His grandmother looked up from her crossword, glasses slipping down her nose. "Lord, Ethan, you brought a wild animal into my house." "She's not wild. She's friendly," he said. "She was hurt. She needs help." The dog stepped forward, as if to make her case herself. She nudged Ethan's leg gently, then sat with a soft woof. His grandmother sighed. "We can't keep her, you know that. We barely have enough money for your school supplies. Let alone dog food and vet bills. I'll take care of her," Ethan said. "I swear, I'll feed her, wash her, everything, please." She looked at the dog again. Then at Ethan, his cheeks flushed. Hair windblown, eyes full of something she hadn't seen in weeks. Joy. She closed her crossword book slowly. "All right, but only if she stays out of my tomato patch." Ethan grinned. He named her Sunny that night. Because of her fur, bright and golden like sunlight through a window. Because of the way she made the room feel warmer just by being in it. And because for the first time since his parents left, he didn't feel like the house was full of empty corners. Sunny slept beside his bed, curled like a ball of warmth. She didn't bark, didn't whine, just breathed softly, every so often thumping her tail against the floor as if dreaming of something better. In the weeks that followed, Ethan and Sunny became inseparable. They explored the meadow behind the house. They raced across the schoolyard after classes ended. They shared peanut butter sandwiches, napped under trees, and even sat side by side in the garage during rainstorms. Watching the sky fall, Sunny followed Ethan everywhere, except inside the school. But she waited outside, near the bike rack, every single day, and every single day, when Ethan ran out the doors. She'd be there, tail wagging, tongue out, eyes full of excitement like it was the best part of her day. Because it was. Ethan didn't talk much about his parents. The truth was, he didn't really know what had happened. First it was arguments, then phone calls in hushed voices. Then his mother packed a bag and left. His father stayed a while longer, drinking too much, sleeping too late. And then one day, Ethan came home to a note and an empty house. He moved in with Grandma 2 weeks later. The kids at school knew. But no one asked. Ethan didn't talk about it until Sunny. She didn't ask either, but she listened. And that was enough. One evening, as the sun dipped low behind the trees, Ethan lay in the tall grass with Sunny curled beside him. "Do you think they'll come back?" he asked. Sunny blinked, rested her chin on his chest. Ethan stared at the sky. "I used to think I did something wrong. Like maybe if I was better, quieter, they wouldn't have left." Sunny nudged him gently with her nose. He smiled. "Yeah, I know. It's dumb." But it didn't feel dumb when he said it to her. It felt like letting go of something heavy. Summer came early that year. The days grew long, filled with bike rides and popsicles and hours in the sun. Ethan taught Sunny how to catch a frisbee, how to roll over, even how to shake hands like a polite guest. She was smart, shockingly so. She seemed to understand things before he said them. One morning, a letter came from the county office. Lost pet recovery case closed. It said, "No microchip, no reports, no one claimed her. She's officially yours now," Grandma said, handing him the paper. Ethan looked at Sunny. She wagged her tail, as if she already knew. He hugged her tight. "You were mine the day I found you." But not everything was perfect. Some kids at school started teasing Ethan about his shadow. Called Sunny a stray, a mutt. Said it was weird he didn't hang out with anyone else. Ethan tried not to care. But Sunny noticed. One day, after a particularly hard afternoon, he sat on the swing behind the school. Head down. "I don't fit in," he whispered. Sunny rested her head on his lap. "I'm not cool. I don't play sports. I don't know what to say to people." Sunny let out a soft, sympathetic woof. Ethan scratched behind her ears. "You don't talk either, but I like you just fine." She licked his hand. Toward the end of summer, Ethan took Sunny back to the edge of the forest. They stood near the spot where he'd found her months before. "I used to think this place was scary," he said. "But you weren't. You were just waiting." He looked down at her. "And maybe I was too." Sunny barked once. Loud, joyful, then chased a butterfly into the tall grass. Ethan laughed and ran after her. And for the first time in a long time, the world felt whole again. That night, as they lay under the stars in the backyard, Grandma brought out a blanket and 2 mugs of warm cocoa. "One for you," she said, "and one for your golden shadow." Sunny sat up proudly. "She's changed you, you know," Grandma added. Ethan looked up. "How? You laugh more. You talk more. You sleep through the night." Ethan nodded. "She saved me." Grandma smiled. "And you saved her." They fell asleep under the stars. Boy and dog. Friends. Survivors. 2 lonely hearts who found each other at the edge of the woods. And chose, every day since, to stay. There were things you could count on in Ethan's town. That the corner store would run out of ice cream every Friday. That the local church bell rang 3 minutes late. Always. And that every evening, just before sunset, you could find a boy and a golden dog sitting at the old bus stop, watching the freight train rumble past the edge of town. Ethan and Sunny. You didn't need to ask who they were. Everyone knew. Sunny had been with Ethan for nearly 2 years now. And in that time, The seasons had shifted, but she hadn't. Her fur was still golden and bright, like spilled sunlight. Her eyes, still watchful and kind. And through every hard moment, she stayed by his side. When the kids at school got meaner, older, sharper with their words, Sonny walked him home without needing a leash. When they pushed Ethan down and called him weird, she stood in front of him, growling until they backed away. When Ethan got the rejection letter from the baseball team, after weeks of practice and nervous waiting, Sonny curled beside him in the garage, head on his knee, like it didn't matter that he didn't make the cut, because to her, he always had. Then came the spring his grandma got sick. It started small, some coughs, some tiredness, but quickly turned serious. Doctor visits, medicine bottles, long naps in the armchair instead of walks in the garden. Ethan tried to help. He made soup, folded laundry, walked home quietly so she could rest. But the fear stayed with him. Not just that she might not get better, but that he'd be alone again. Every night, he sat with Sonny on the porch. "She's tough," he'd whisper into her fur. "She's not going anywhere." Sonny would press her warm head against his side like she believed it, like she knew it. And sometimes, that was enough to get through the night. The town came to love them. In a quiet way. People left dog treats on their porch. The diner owner started keeping a water bowl out front. One of the older boys even taught Ethan how to patch a flat tire on his bike. And didn't make fun of him for once. "Good dog you got there," he said. "Got one eye on you. One on the world." It was true. Sonny had a way of watching everything. Like she carried some secret wisdom in her paws. Like she knew more than she let on. Especially at the old bus stop. It was a forgotten corner near the tracks. The shelter was rusted, the bench crooked, the paint flaking off the old transit sign. But every evening, Ethan and Sonny would sit there, sometimes with snacks, sometimes with nothing but the fading light, and wait. At 6:37 p.m., the freight train passed by. Always the same sound, a low, rhythmic thunder, always the same wind that followed, lifting Ethan's hair and ruffling Sonny's ears. They never waved, they just watched, like the train carried a promise. One Ethan said aloud one night when he was 12. And repeated every summer after. "Someday," he whispered, "I'll take you with me. We'll see all the places on that line. The big cities, the oceans, forests where trees touch the sky." He smiled and looked at her. "You just have to wait." "Okay." Sonny licked his hand. "Deal." As the years passed, they kept that routine. Even when Ethan got taller and his voice started to change. Even when kids from school called him "Dog Boy" and laughed. Even when Grandma had to stay in the hospital for a full week. And Ethan didn't talk to anyone except Sonny. Especially then. He'd sit at the station, shoulders slumped, heart heavy, and feel the steady breath of his dog beside him. It was a rhythm he could trust. Like the trains, like the sun, like her. One August afternoon, something rare happened. As they sat at the bus stop, an older man approached. Gray suit, leather briefcase. Not the type who usually walked that part of town. "Mind if I sit?" he asked. Ethan nodded. Sunny watched the man with quiet curiosity. "You two come here often?" the man asked. "Every day," Ethan said. "Why?" Ethan looked at Sunny, then back at the tracks. "Because someday we'll ride that train. And this is how we practice." The man smiled faintly. "Well, I hope you both make it." He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a travel magazine. Folded and creased. "Take this," he said, handing it over. "I used to circle the places I wanted to go. Paris, Vancouver, Tokyo. Never made it to half of them. But it's good to dream." Ethan unfolded it that night and used a pencil to mark the cities closest to the train line. Then he whispered, "Someday," again into Sunny's fur. She thumped her tail twice. By the time Ethan turned 14, Sunny was starting to slow down. Not much, just little things. A longer stretch in the morning. Shorter sprints in the field. A nap after every walk. But Ethan noticed. He asked the vet if it was normal. "She's just aging," the vet said. "Still healthy, just older." Ethan nodded. But inside, something cracked. The dog he'd grown up with, the shadow by his side. His protector, his secret keeper, wasn't immortal. One day, she wouldn't be able to climb onto the bus stop bench. One day, she wouldn't be there to chase away the dark thoughts. One day, he might have to sit there alone. That thought haunted him more than he could say. So he started writing things down. Every memory, every silly moment. Like the time Sunny stole a full sandwich and buried it in the garden. Or the time she barked at her own reflection in the window for 10 minutes. He wrote letters to Sunny. "Dear Sunny," one read, "If you could talk, I know you'd tell me I'm not broken. That it's okay not to have all the answers yet. That even if I don't fit in at school, I fit with you." He kept the letters in a box under his bed. Sunny never saw them. But maybe she didn't need to. Maybe she already knew. One night, at the bus stop, Ethan turned to her and said, "If I never have a best friend in school, that's okay, because I already have the best one in the world." Sunny leaned against him. The train came and went. But they stayed a little longer than usual. Watching the horizon, as if waiting for something else. Ethan had always known this day would come. But that didn't make it easier. The acceptance letter came in March, crisp paper. Bold lettering. And the seal of a university halfway across the country. His first real step toward the future. Toward becoming the person he'd dreamed of. A writer. Maybe. A traveler. Someone who'd make Sunny proud. He waited 2 days before telling his grandma. Another week before he told his friends. And nearly a month before he told Sunny. Of course, she didn't understand the words. Not fully. But dogs are smarter than we give them credit for. She knew something was changing. She watched him pack. She followed him room to room. And each night, she curled up beside his bed and let out the kind of sigh that felt heavier than usual. As if she was bracing herself. Even if she didn't know for what. Sunny was 13 now. Her golden fur had faded at the edges. Softened by time. Her back curved slightly when she walked. She no longer ran beside Ethan's bike but still limped along faithfully on their morning strolls. The vet had said, "She's healthy for her age. Just Take it slow." Ethan had nodded, throat tight. Taking it slow wasn't the problem. The problem was that life never did. On the last morning, the sky was overcast, the kind of gray that made everything feel softer, like the world was holding its breath. Ethan's bag was zipped, his ticket printed, and the bus was due in 40 minutes. Sunny stood by the door, eyes wide, tail wagging weakly. "She knows," Grandma whispered. Ethan knelt beside her. "You're a good girl," he said, "the best girl." She leaned her head into his chest and stayed there for a long time. Not moving, not blinking, just pressing close like she could hold back the moment if she tried hard enough. When the bus pulled up at the edge of town, Ethan hugged his grandma, climbed aboard with one last look, and sat by the window. Sunny stood in the grass beside the gravel lot, ears forward, body tense. As the engine roared and the wheels turned, she ran. Not fast, not far, but she ran. Her legs wobbled, and her breaths were short. But she chased the bus down the road until she couldn't anymore. And then she stopped, right at the edge of the old bus stop bench, the one they'd sat on every evening. Watching the trains, she sat down slowly, watched the road, and didn't move. Ethan watched her through the window, hand pressed to the glass, tears rolling silently down his cheek. She looked so small, so still, but she wasn't sad. She was waiting. Sunny didn't go home that day. Grandma found her hours later, curled at the bench, head resting on her front paws. She tried to coax her back with treats, with calls, with soft words, but Sunny stayed. She waited until the sun dipped low, then came home quietly, ate her dinner, and curled into her bed. But the next day, she went back to the bus stop. At first, the town thought it was sweet. "Oh look, there's Sunny," someone would say. Ethan's old dog, waiting for him. Kids dropped off snacks. Adults brought her water. The train conductor even started to slow down as he passed, giving a soft whistle and a wave. And Sunny would wag her tail. Just once. And keep waiting. She wasn't just sitting. She was remembering, replaying 1,000 afternoons of laughter, promises, and dreams shared under wide-open skies. And keeping her side of the promise. "You just have to wait." Ethan called every Sunday. "How's she doing?" he'd ask. Grandma's voice was always gentle. "Still goes to the bench every day. Comes home for dinner. Sleeps by the door." He tried to focus on school, on meeting new people, on chasing the future he'd always wanted. But every time he looked at the photo of Sunny on his desk, something tugged at his heart. He remembered the way her fur felt under his hand, the sound of her soft breathing, the way her tail always thumped twice when he whispered, "Good girl." One afternoon in November, he got a message from his grandma. "She's still waiting. It's getting cold, but she goes anyway." Snow came early that year. Light at first, then heavier, and still. Every day around 6:30 p.m. Sunny made her slow walk to the edge of town. Sat on the bench, watched the road, waited for the train, waited for the boy who made her whole. People started bringing blankets. One student knitted her a scarf. Someone else built a small shelter beside the bench so she'd have cover. But Sunny didn't sit inside it. She stayed on the bench. Always the same spot. Always watching the road. Then, one day, the bus pulled in again. The same lot. The same gravel crunch. And this time, Ethan stepped off. Backpack slung over one shoulder. Taller, older, eyes filled with the ache of too many days gone. And Sunny, she was already there, sitting up, tail twitching weakly, as if she'd known, as if her heart had counted every mile, every day. He didn't run to her. He walked slowly, knelt beside the bench, and whispered, "I'm here." Sunny laid her head in his lap and let out the softest, deepest sigh of her life. They stayed there long after the bus left. Boy and dog, reunited, warm, but together, and as the train rumbled past in the distance, Ethan held her close and said, "I didn't forget," and Sunny, too tired to wag, just closed her eyes. Because she hadn't forgotten either. Life moved fast after college. Ethan graduated with honors, got an internship in the city, then a job, then a promotion, rent, meetings, deadlines, days blurred into weeks, weeks into years. He kept telling himself he'd go back. For a weekend, a holiday. Maybe summer, but something always came up. He called Grandma when he could. Sent birthday cards. Texted photos of his new apartment. His new desk. Even a new dog once. But he didn't talk much about Sunny. Because talking about Sunny meant facing something heavier than guilt. It meant remembering the promise. You just have to wait. It had been nearly 5 years since he last stood at the old bus stop. 5 years since that tearful goodbye. When Sunny had chased the bus until her legs couldn't carry her. 5 years since her head had rested on his lap. Eyes closed, trusting him completely. And 5 years since he had broken that trust by never returning. The photo appeared on a Tuesday. He was in a cafe, waiting for coffee, scrolling absent-mindedly through social media when a headline caught his eye. Loyal golden dog still waits at abandoned bus stop after all these years. He stared at the thumbnail. The image loaded slowly on the weak Wi-Fi. And when it appeared, everything stopped. The world, his breath, the sound of clinking mugs around him. There she was. Sunny, older, thinner, her face more white than gold now. Her eyes clouded, her body curved with age. But she was there. Sitting on the crooked bench at the edge of town, under a fading bus sign, staring down the road as if the boy she once knew would appear at any moment. The caption read, "Locals say she's been coming here every evening for over a decade. No one knows her full story, but they all know her name. Sunny." Ethan dropped his phone. People turned. He didn't care. His heart slammed against his ribs. His chest ached with a weight he couldn't name. He fumbled to grab his phone again. Scrolled through the comments, the shares, the reposts. Thousands of them. People from across the country had fallen in love with her. Artists had drawn her. Musicians had written songs. Strangers wrote poetry about loyalty and love and time. But Ethan couldn't read any of it. Because to him, she wasn't a symbol. She was his first friend. His golden shadow. the keeper of promises. And she was still waiting. He didn't pack a suitcase. He didn't tell his boss. He booked the next bus. In his hands, he carried 3 things: a bouquet of marigolds, her favorite, a bag of roast chicken, still warm, and a letter, folded, crumpled, stained with regret. The town hadn't changed much. Same cracked sidewalks, same corner store with the crooked ice cream sign. But as the bus pulled into the lot by the old shelter, Ethan saw what had changed. The crowd. People stood in silence around the bus stop. Some had cameras, others had candles, a few just had hands over their hearts. And in the center, just like in the photo, Sonny. Ethan stepped off the bus. No one said a word. He walked slowly, afraid the sound of his own breath might shatter the moment. When he reached the bench, his knees gave out. He knelt beside her. "Hey, girl." Sonny lifted her head, just slightly. Her eyes blinked, clouded, dim. But she knew. A small sound left her throat. Not a bark, not a whine, a breath, a memory. Ethan reached out, hands shaking, and gently touched her face. "I'm here," he whispered. "I'm so sorry I made you wait." Tears streamed down his face. He placed the flowers beside her, opened the bag of chicken and laid it near her paws. Sonny sniffed it, slowly, gently. She didn't eat, but her tail twitched once. A wag. Just one. Ethan rested his head against her shoulder. And time, for a few sacred moments, folded into itself. He stayed with her through the night. Locals brought blankets, tea, hand warmers. No one tried to move her. No one tried to move him. At dawn, as the sun touched the edge of the tracks, Ethan read her the letter. "Dear Sonny, you waited longer than I deserved. You remembered when I forgot. You forgave when I didn't show. You kept the bench warm. You kept the promise. I love you. I'm sorry. I'm home." He folded it gently and tucked it into her collar. And finally, Sonny closed her eyes. They buried her behind the bench. Under the big oak tree. Someone carved a small sign. "Sonny." She waited. He came back. Love never forgets. That evening, the town held a vigil. People lit candles. Some sang. Ethan sat on the bench. Alone now. He stared down the tracks. And for the first time in years, he smiled, not from happiness, but from knowing. She had waited, and he had kept his word, just in time. A month later, Ethan returned with a suitcase. He moved back in with his grandmother. Started writing again. Published his first story. Called it, "The Girl at the Bus Stop." But everyone who read it knew. She wasn't just a dog. She was the heart of the town. A golden thread tying past to present. Memory to moment. And every evening, as the train rumbled past, Ethan sat on the bench. Alone. But never lonely. Because love, true love, doesn't vanish. It waits, and watches, and forgives. The wind was cold that morning, sharp with autumn's edge, but Ethan didn't notice. He was running, through the sleepy town that hadn't changed in years. Past the bakery with the crooked sign. Past the rusted bike rack where he and Sonny used to race each other home. His chest burned, legs aching. But he ran. Because Grandma had called. Because her voice had trembled. She's there. Ethan, still at the bench. But I don't think she has much time. So Ethan ran, heart full of prayers. That he wasn't too late. That this golden thread still tied him together. That he'd get to see her, one last time. The sky was gray when he reached the edge of town. And there it was. That old bus stop shelter with peeling paint. Leaning just slightly under the weight of time. And on the bench, Sunny, lying on her side, still, breathing slow, a patchy old blanket tucked around her by someone kind. And beside her, a bowl of water and a faded photo. The one Ethan had left on his last visit. Him as a boy. Sunny beside him, both of them smiling like the world was theirs. Ethan stepped forward, voice catching. Sunny, her ears twitched. Barely. Then, her tail moved. A soft, slow wag. Once. Then again. She opened her eyes. Clouded now. Dim with years. But still, unmistakably Sunny's. And when they met his, she knew. Ethan dropped to his knees. "I'm here," he whispered, voice cracking. "I came back." He gathered her into his arms. Gently, holding her like something precious and fragile and full of meaning. "I'm sorry," he said. "I should have come sooner. You waited, all this time." Sunny rested her head against his chest. As if to say, "It's okay." As if to say, "You came. That's all that mattered." Ethan stroked her fur, coarser now. Matted in places. But still golden where the sun touched it. "You kept the promise for both of us," he murmured. "You always did." The wind rustled leaves across the road. A train whistled in the distance. And Sunny, cradled in the arms of the boy she had loved every day of her life, let out one final breath. Peaceful, still, complete. She didn't die alone. She died held. She died knowing that her wait hadn't been in vain. That the road she watched every evening, the promise she clung to with every heartbeat, had led him home. Ethan stayed at the bench until the stars came out. People passed in silence, some laying flowers, some just pausing with a hand over their heart. No one disturbed them, because everyone knew what this moment was. It wasn't just a goodbye. It was the closing of something sacred. The town held a small service the next day. Simple, quiet, just how Sunny would have wanted. The mayor gave a speech. The kids from the local school read poems. One little girl brought a plush golden retriever and left it on the bench. And when it was over, they unveiled the plaque, "Sunny's Seat," in memory of the golden dog who waited. A symbol of loyalty, love, and the promise kept. You came back. That's enough. From that day on, no one sat there without knowing the story. It became part of the town's rhythm. A place people visited not to catch a bus, but to remember what it meant to believe in someone. To wait. To forgive. Ethan stayed in town longer that time. He didn't rush back to the city. He took walks in the places Sunny had loved, the field, the trail behind the house, the path near the school where they used to race falling leaves. At first, it hurt, but over time, the pain softened into something quieter, something like gratitude. He started writing again. Stories, poems, letters, each one laced with pieces of her. A year later, he published a book, The Dog Who Waited. On the dedication page, it read, "For Sonny, who taught me that love doesn't ask for perfection, just for presence, just for a promise made and kept." Sometimes, Ethan still sat at her bench. Alone, but not really. He'd bring a flower, or a sandwich to split. And he'd look down the road the same way she used to. Not always expecting something to come, but honoring the wait, because in that space, in that stillness, she lived. In every leaf that blew across the pavement. In every train that passed. In every memory that whispered, "You came back, that's enough." And so the bench remained. Painted fresh each year by the school art class. Flowers always nearby, and a carved wooden statue of a golden dog added later by a local sculptor, ears perked, tail curled, eyes fixed on the road. Sonny, waiting, but not alone anymore, because now, everyone knew the story, of a boy and his dog, of promises made at sunset, of years that passed too fast, of a final meeting, and the soft, steady eyes that said everything without a single sound. Forgiveness, faith, forever.
Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please comment 1. And if you didn't, just hit like. See you in the next videos.